We're very excited this morning to have Dr. Zhao here to give us our keynote presentation to kick this off. And his bio and his accomplishments are enormous. So he said, just make it short, and then we'll turn it over to him. But I want to say a few things. So Dr. Zhao is an internationally known scholar, author, and speaker. His works focuses on the implications of globalization in technology and education, so it's perfect for what we're doing. He has designed schools that cultivate global competence, developed computer games for language learning, and founded research and development institutions to explore innovative education models. He has published 100 articles and 20 books, and I read that and I'm astonished because I can barely ever write the article I need for our newsletter every other week, so I just don't think the man sleeps. But if you haven't read his books, Catching Up or Leading the Way, American Education in the Age of Globalization, which I read and found fascinating and I would highly recommend, and we will have for sale later on, and I'll tell you about that. He currently serves as the Presidential Chair and Director of the Institute for Global and Online Education in the College of Education at the University of Oregon, where he is also a professor in the Department of Educational Measurement, Policy, and Leadership. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Zhao. Thank you.
Well, good morning. It's thanks, Mark, for the great introduction. And Steve, I'm even shorter than Mark, so that's going to adjust this a little bit. It is. I was really enjoying the theme of the conference called the global future, and I was actually thinking about. So you were talking about Americans' view of the what's the American perspective? What's the world like? So this is called the word according to Americans 2012. I don't know if you can specifically say this stuff. It's kind of funny. Just in case you haven't noticed, it's how we name the word right now. I was always enjoying the different kind of perspectives. So we are the land of awesome. Okay, that's how it comes from Americans. Then move on to anyway. So. That's kind of fun. Speak of the idea about what's the implication of global. You can't have too much fun. I'm moving the way. No more. That's it. Done. Okay, done. I was really thinking about. We work every day try to make sure our children can live in a brighter future than what we have, and that's I think our goal. So I think today I'm going to take a very selfish approach to think about education. What kind of education do you want for your own children? So this is my daughter, and she just turned 15, so I'm giving her the most important education of life, which is driving right now. I'm teaching her how to drive. It's I can tell you it's quite a exciting experience and an interesting experience too. It's if you want to have any emotional reflections of your teaching experience, try to teach your daughter again when she's 15. Driving in Oregon, we have all these mountains and hills, when I look at, globally speaking, what kind of education you want? Someone for your own children, should be for somebody else. So I've been trying to buy the best education I can afford for my own daughter. I sent her to a Montessori school, private in Michigan. We lived in Michigan. She went to public school. She's now in a public school, but I'm not sure if I have the right education for her. I don't know. I'm not sure. Every day I question that, but actually I don't. My wife does that, but we talk about this a lot. And so, how do you measure the best education? How do you know if your children have got the best education? I have another child who is just finished college, and he went to a public school, then an independent school, mostly boarding school. He was 13 or 14. We decided we did not have enough experience to handle him, so we said, go to a professional educator. He went to boarding in New Jersey, the Petty School. And so he just finished college at the University of Chicago. And you can imagine he spent a lot of my money. And he was good enough to get into one of the most expensive schools, but not good enough to get any money, for that. So that's I can also tell you this, I'm a professor, I make enough money to not qualify for any financial assistance, but not enough to not care either. So that's, when he graduated recently, just June 15th, and we had an interesting conversation in Chicago, and the big conversation was surrounding the issue about his major. He just graduated. He said, unlike most Chinese, he did not finish as a doctor, a financial manager, and to play with other people's money. And he actually majored in art and art history, which is very un-Chinese. And he was feeling sorry about that. And he said, Dad, what are you going to do when people ask you what your son's major was? And I said, well, art. He said, do you feel, because in Chinese culture, if your son majors something like art, means he is completely dumb, incapable of doing anything else. And he felt bad about it. I said, well, actually, not to worry. You're not a failure. You may be a failure for a Chinese guy, but now you are in America. But you're in America now. I said you are. It's different. I said in many ways I am a failure too to my father, because I was born in a village in China. So I'm a failed peasant. Look at me now. I'm not doing any farming. I can't do farm very well. So I'm the complete failure as a peasant, as a farmer. So I said, but luckily I'm running away. But now I have one condition. I said, if you don't return to Oregon to live in my basement, you've got a good education, regardless of the major. And so that's actually my definition of high-quality education. How successful are you at keeping kids out of your parents' basement? I mean, I think that's when this nation in the public schools, they're talking about college and career readiness. Obama's talking. That's horrible. That's not a good definition. They may be ready for college, they may be ready for career, but still come back to your basement. That's still not working. I think the definition is important. It's to think about how do you keep kids out of your basement. It's what do you need to be out of your basement? Actually think about those things. What kind of skills and knowledge and talents we can keep our children out of basement? Christmas time they can come back, but not they stay there forever. Now, I think there's really 3 sets of skills and knowledge that we need. Number 1 is that they have to be able to do something or know something or provide some kind of service that other people want. So they're willing to give them the financial resources, they can live independently. We call them, whatever talents, employment or entrepreneur skills. The second would be mostly psychological independence or health enough to not rely on you to give them advice every 3 seconds, so stuff like that. So they don't have to call you every time. And also they have to be a good citizen, somehow have the capacity to live in the community without being kicked out by their neighbors. That's I think those are very essential requirements. Would you think, right? But how are we doing in those domains? We can ask all the questions, how are we doing with that? Are we doing the right things? And unfortunately, a lot of this data would suggest that we're not doing very well. It's that we're actually doing a horrible job in keeping our other people's children out of their basement. We're seeing a huge number of our students, big percentage of them, not staying out of their parents' basement. This is some of the more recent data about how our college graduates are not staying out of their parents' basement, just simply unemployed. You can see about 53% in the US. We got, in Korea, we always talk about, which is high academic achievement country. That is about their president says skip college, By the way, everybody's suggesting people staying out of college. In China too, actually, except Obama. Obama is only said just go to college so you can, actually owe some money to the colleges. And in the US right now, on average, each college graduate owes about $23,000. The college debt in the US is over $1 trillion. That is more than our credit card debt put together. And you know how much Americans like to borrow money on those plastic cards. You know, that's it's a lot of money. And I just got an email. This is something very interesting. This just now from Spain, a reporter in Escuela, you know, the Spanish education newspaper, talking about how a lot of people in the EU countries, in Netherlands and Canada, for example, youth unemployment is 14%. The EU countries is 25%, you know, the European Union countries. Nobody is very successful today at keeping kids out of parents' basement. China graduates 6 million college students a day right now. I'm not a day, no, not a year, not a day. That's a lot of people. And there are a year, but half of them may not have jobs. So what is the story here? So how do we explain this? This is something very simple. It's that just simply they are not equipped. But at the same time, we got millions of jobs claiming they are unfilled. A lot of employers are looking for talents. One of the biggest problems in China for foreign companies is to find the right person to work for them. So you got to have the mismatch of talents. Is that we have businesses looking for people, and we have people who don't have jobs. Why do we have this? And you can blame a lot of public policy. You can talk about, you know, in the U.S., I think it's kind of right now, it's very popular to blame Obama, you know, for not running the proper website. You know, actually, it's by the way, there is actually a website if you get unhappy about your life. It's called kind of thanksobama.com. And if you spill coffee in the morning on your pants, you can go and make a click. Say, thanks, Obama, I spilled my coffee. It's a lot of things. You can always blame the public, you know, for Wall Street bankers for not creating jobs or ruining our economy. We can do all of those things. But I think we have to come back to reflect on our own education. I titled this one called Two Paradigms of Education. So maybe the education we've been providing to our students are not equipping them with the skills, the talents, the knowledge they need to live in this society. And what is that? And so let me try to invite you to think about what we've been doing in education. I think in education we have been doing something like this, making sausage. That's what I call sausage making. We've been doing a lot of sausage making tasks. So this is the paradigm I use to summarize most educational practices today. We've been trying to follow this model. That is, we start by describing the end results, the outcomes of our education. We call that employable skills or successful skills. And you call that a curriculum, you know, the learning objectives. Remember that learning objectives? It's always do this. You always start, when parents come to your school, you say, well, tell them, by the time they graduate from our school, they will be equipped with this skills, this talents. Remember those things? They have the core curriculum. We try to fix that all the time. The public schools, the Common Core is one attempt. State standards is another attempt in all those things. By the way, the Common Core now, I don't know how, it is going very strong and very big. I think many, even independent schools are trying to adopt it. And I don't know if any of your schools trying to do that. I know some schools in Chicago, they're trying to make Montessori to tie with the Common Core, you know, state standards. And I have been known as someone who is running against the Common Core. Now people invite me to speak a lot. But a lot of in the public schools, the School Boards Association, Superintendents Association, they always caution me, said, okay, you know, we are a Common Core state, so basically tone down what you try to talk about Common Core. I tell them, I said, I love the Common Core state standards if they were not common or core. I say, it's not a problem, the standards now is the common and core problem. But anyway, that's one of the things they're trying to fix, is trying to fix the end. We always start with the end. We have a specification of our products. And for many independent schools, the employable skills can be replaced by whatever Harvard wants. Right, that's what, you know, that's basically we try to make a guess of somebody's desire. Then as a school system, we try to be as efficient as possible to produce those students with the required skills. So that's why you do professional development, you do classroom monitoring, you bring data, you know, database driven decisions, you try to track the students year 1, year 2. Hopefully they're all going to move through this process. And this is really like a sausage making process, that's how we try to do it very well, because we do not care and we shouldn't care, as we were told, what each individual student wants, can do, is passionate about. We don't care about that because we are going to reduce you to this one. That's in essence, we're trying to say anyone who does not fit in this paradigm is a problem. We need to give them special attention so we can correct them. We have target, we have goals. So this model works beautifully. If everybody wants sausage, that's a great model, right? That's a fabulous model. And we have been producing those sausages. We got, of course, you have the Harvard sausage, you got the Stanford sausage, but you have the community college sausage, I have the dropout sausage. But they all measure against the same specification. We call them academic cognitive skills. We measure all those things. And this model is very appealing to human beings. As human beings, we always want to know, what are we buying? Remember that? We want to know what my kids will be able to do. We always want to know. And also it works. And it was beautiful for a long time because it works. First of all, for a long time, you could actually predict. You could predict what skills and knowledge we want in a closed local society. It doesn't change very much. Like in my little village, I can tell you that for a long time, the most important talents and skills we need is how to drive a water buffalo. That's the common core village standard, in my place, and we did, and that's how I felt. I wasn't good at that thing. That's how you can think about it. That's how we do it. You could predict, and also in those societies, we have to suppress talents because most other talents are not very useful. If you think about it, most talents are not very useful in those villages. I mean, Lady Gaga would be completely useless in my village. Would you want her in your village? What could she do? I mean, really, it's just, so would actually be Justin Bieber, actually, speaking of that. So for a long time, the human society has followed the big change. You look at, since the 1901, we have seen a decline of jobs in farming industry, in farming, forestry. So it's changed. And then we see it's being replaced by industrialization. Henry Ford would not want Lady Gaga either. Okay, so imagine those things. So we needed, for a long time, our society, millions of people with similar knowledge and skills. We want a lot, and we do not want those people to be great. We want them to be mediocre, to be compliant, just good enough to follow orders. That's how we've been doing. That's how our school's been doing. Then the few people you produce for Harvard, they become basically, bigger sausages to manage the smaller sausages. That's how do. That's because they're all looking for employment. And in those times, creative people were still valuable, but not that much. Creative people were mostly accidental, with accidents. That's why if you look at the Silicon Valley, the major industry has always been started by dropouts. Then they hire the graduates. Remember those things? Then the graduates become managers of the dropouts' creations. That's how it has happened, always accidental. So this is how we've been doing. That's why we're continue to follow this model to produce good employees. A good employee follows orders. A good employee follows orders very well and just barely competent enough to do that. That's how we have been trying to do all the time. So we don't want creative people either. Right, today we talk about everybody loves creative people, but I think not in your classroom. That's the kind of thing, We love creative kids, but not in my place. We always like those things, that's how we treat those guys, So creativity is not valued at all. For a long time, when nobody writes about creativity, if you go to the Google books, creativity was only began to be written about since after 1920s. That's correct. And then the writings about creativity began to increase peaked around the year 2000. Because we suddenly realized creativity was really important. But for a long time we've been trying to write about children for a long time. Look at the mentionings of children in Google books, millions of them, versus creativity. barely there. They don't overlap. We write about children, basic how to turn into good sausages, but not about creativity. So we've been trying to decrease creativity. Schools, in essence, have mostly become a creativity suppressing entity because we want to try to turn into this. And we do a good job with that. Actually, look at how creativity gets dropped. When children, 5-year-olds, come to our schools, about 98% of them are creative at the genius level. Really creative. Every child. If you look at your kindergartners, the first graders, they're highly motivated, eager to please, do anything, and ultimately very creative. Then after 5 years, when they reach age 10, we've successfully got rid of 60% of those guys. So 32% are creative at the same level. And then by the time they reach age 15, 10% is left. So that's how we decline, really fast. And Howard Gardner and many people notice this called something, the 4th grade slump. That's almost universally observed. If you go to school, around 4th grade, your creativity drops, your interest drops because you become serious as a student now. And this is getting worse. Once you become adults, you go to college, finish your degree, specialize in something, and get a job. We got 2% left when you reach age 44. That's about most of us. And your chance comes after your retirement. Your creativity could bounce back after your retirement. So there is something to look forward to. And just to prove that's true, I don't know if you know, President George Bush now is painting. Notice, if George can learn to paint, you guys have a chance to bounce back with your creativity. It's just, that's good, something to look forward to. Now, when we try to change this whole thing, so what has changed? We've always been preparing employees. What has changed? We have been trying to continue to create sausage, but then the working class began to decline. We just don't need as many employees as before anymore. Why is that? Something very simple, globalization and technology. It's a fairly simple, actually, change we just did not want it to happen. That is, this is a figure that would shows that the decline of manufacturing jobs in the US since 1970s. But at the same time, the blue line shows the increase of productivity in the manufacturing sector. That's why in the US today, if you look at the manufacturing sector, depending on what number you look at, we actually have a very strong manufacturing sector. But we just don't have enough people. We don't need so many people to work there anymore. What happened? Number one, as you were reminded last year, remember there was an interesting debate between Obama and Romney. Do you still remember Romney, Mitt Romney? Still? America, we got so much news every day, we just forget those guys. But anyway, they had several debates last year. Their big debate is really about this figure. It's about how to create jobs. We've lost a lot of jobs. But their conclusion was kind of partially correct. My summary of all their big questions, both Romney and Obama are trying to prove who hates China more. That's basically they're trying to do. They're trying to prove one point. They say, okay, because they think Chinese stole all the jobs. That's it's not really exactly true. Just the Chinese now are hating the Vietnamese for stealing their jobs. So that's the same thing. It's basically globalization makes it possible for jobs to be moving around the globe. And if a job can be done cheaply or more actually cheaper overseas in one location, it will be done there because the transaction and transportation cost is so low now. It's going to happen. Now that happens all the time. So since the 1970s, we've been sending shoemaking jobs, textile jobs to other places. Now we're moving to high-level jobs now. Actually, financing, banking, all those jobs are overseas. It's computer programming. All those things are going other places. And that kind of thing can make us more productive. Means a few of us will make more money than a lot of us will have no jobs. That's what happens. But that's not the whole story. There's another story behind is the technology. Machines have been replacing a lot of jobs since the 70s. And look at the ATMs. Simple example. We used to, every small little village have a little bank. Somebody's going to be working there. Now you don't have that. Remember those things? When I first came to this country in the 1990s, I was surprised, and I was not so shocked, by those the people setting up shops called H&R Block. Remember those accountants in shopping malls to pay taxes. I had no idea you got to pay anything at that time. I was a student. I had nothing to do with them. But now they are gone. Who is doing their job now? TurboTax. Do you notice TurboTax? Right? And then you have another. Actually, by the way, I was talking to the guy who drove me here yesterday, and I said, Google is going to drive your car in the future. You won't have a job in 5 years. That's serious. Google is going to do those things. So all those jobs have been replaced. And many of you flew here. You checked in online, I'm sure, right? When you check in online, you're taking jobs away from the airlines. Do you notice that? So just a suggestion, if you want to create jobs for America, stop using any of the technology stuff. So basically, just don't just go to a bank, demand to talk to somebody. That'll be useful. And I mean, you know that this is just all shocking. Technology and globalization takes jobs away. And that's just happening, and because it makes us more productive. 100 years ago, what used to take 6 people now requires 1 person. This is just the reality. Now, what does this reality mean to us? It's what we call the disappearance of the middle class. This is the figure. This is actually the U.S. economy today. Everything is going up except high-paying jobs. Do you know? That's basically everything is going up. For the last 30 years in the U.S., we've been talking about how the bipolar growth of population. The top end of people are growing. People are making more money. That's what people call the creative class. Think about Mark Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg is an interesting case, right? He himself is socially challenged, and some would call a sociopath. But he created a social website and makes a lot of money by sending you something to waste your time with. It's a fascinating concept, right? But it's interesting. Look at Facebook. So people like Zuckerberg have always existed. Those what I call the accidental creative entrepreneur people. Jobs, Gates, all those people have always existed. But they used to create jobs for other people. Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, when they create those jobs, they create a lot of middle-class jobs. Massive number of them. Ford, General Motors. But now the new creators, they create value without creating the jobs. Because of outsourcing, because of globalization, because of machines. Facebook now employs about 6,000 people. Do you know the size of Facebook? Facebook's 3 times the size of General Motors in terms of market value. That's a lot of money, right? Apple computers, it's very wealthy, lots of value, everybody buys stuff. Employs about 43,000 people in the US. That's not a lot of people, notice. So then we have another level that's growing fast, which we call the service sector. That is people who bring Zuckerberg his coffee, the guys like that. So that's why we have a lot of college students, they're working at Costco. I don't know if you guys have Costco here, but you have Walmart and a Starbucks. And some of the, you actually in America is fun. You are seeing that some of the best educated people work in the service industry. So you have the most educated bartenders nowadays. You actually talk to a lot of them. You'll find a lot of them. So what's happening here is that we are missing the middle class. And education has always been responsible for creating the middle class. We have not been responsible for creating top class or the bottom class. We are the middle class creators. So what you saw those figures I showed you, college graduates start getting jobs. Those are the middle class is missing. So now, our challenge for all of us to think, who will become the new middle class? That's our job, to save the society, civilization, and to keep our kids out of our basement. So who will be the new middle class? Well, the new middle class is the creative class. According to, this is the Richard Florida's data from the rise of the creative class. Over the last, since about 1980s, 1/3 of Americans' workforce become the creative class. People make things. Remember, traditionally the creative group were basically accidental. They make a very small proportion, and most of the time they're useless. Most of the creative, actually in most authoritarian societies, they actually are put in jail. Most of them. We don't like those creative people. Creative people messes things up. That's basically I've never liked to create creative people either, because they create something, we have to get used to it. Do you know that's we have to really reflect on this issue. Creative people are destructive people. That's why we try to suppress those guys. We don't like them, and then if they create something, we get used to it. That's fine. So that's creativity itself is not good or bad. Really, seriously, think about that. Now, but the problem is that today, unless you are creative, you have no job. That's the problem. We're changing. So I'm going to just creative people is in demand. It becomes a new middle class. It's a characteristic everybody has to have. There is another element another element that can create a new middle class. The new middle class have to become the traditionally useless people. Well, like Kim Kardashian, Kardashian is a good example. Just think about, the traditionally useless people like Kardashian have become useful. I don't know, you may debate on that one, how useful she is, but however, she is not in her parents' basement, would you think? Yeah, you would agree. I highlight her because I met her once. It's so much fun. But she never met me. I just saw her. I was in Melbourne, Australia, at a conference, and we're in a hotel. We were in the hotel. Yes, that's true. And we stayed in the same hotel. I was trying to get in the elevator, and then there's a group of people escorting someone in and asked me to step out of the elevator. I said, fine, okay. So I asked her, I said, who is that person? Someone said, that's Kim. Kim is here. Okay, oh, Kim, okay. So I said, who is Kim? So then people were in the lobby. Kids, teenagers were hanging out in the lobby on the sidewalk outside the hotel. This is near the casino, Crown Casino, near Yarra River in Melbourne. And so I said, I got to talk to my daughter, my 15-year-old. She knows everything about this guy, kind of people. And so she's my pop culture consultant. I just asked her, I said, so who is this Kim person? And my daughter said, what's probably Kim Kardashian? I said, why are people following her? She said, well, because she's a celebrity. I said, what celebrity for what? And she said, nothing. And she's not even surprised. It's nothing. And she didn't even know you cannot be a celebrity for nothing. But she is. So I've been studying this nothingness in the value. This actually is not really nothingness. It's the rise of the traditionally undervalued talents. Different times, different societies, we value different talents. Talents, we are different and talented. We have different skills. But those skills and those talents were not useful before, now becomes useful. This Daniel Pink, would talk about the rise of the right brain thinkers and all this stuff. I wouldn't necessarily say the right brain thinkers, but I'll give you an example to say how different times, different societies value different talents. I think Pink used this term called the age of necessity and the age of abundance. Age of necessity and the age of abundance. In different times, human beings consume different products and services, therefore different skills and knowledge that make them. And I lived in my little village in China. That's definitely the age of necessity. It's like Mark was in Kathmandu, and that's age of necessity. That is, you consume things that's necessary for survival. And by the way, I have to tell you, iPhone is not a necessity. No matter how much you will not die if you don't use it. Okay. So necessity means something if you don't, you will die. So America was like that 100 years ago. Most of our energy, our resources are spent on securing food, shelter, and clothing. Most, about 80% of our income were spent on that 100 years ago. Today, we spend less than 50% some probably 30% on those necessities. So in my village, we spend all our resources on securing food, shelter, and clothing. And by the way, so that's why in my village, there will be no products or services that aimed at convincing people they should eat. Okay, so in my village, nobody needs to be convinced they should eat and persuaded. So therefore, there's no talent, skills, knowledge required to produce those products. Now coming to the US, I would perhaps say about 90% of our energy about food is about convincing you you should eat here, and you should eat my way. Do you look at the food commercials on television, on the radio, and you drive on the billboards, all those commercials. So they were convincing you should eat. That's shocking, right? It's useless. But we need to be convinced somehow. And then you look at the talents involved in producing those products. It's art, it's design, it's writing, it's acting, it's music, it's dancing. It's different, right? So in my village, those talents are completely useless, except for a few special festivals. No one could have made a living to convince me we should eat. Then we have the creative people who come up with all varieties of food. Do you notice that? I don't know, probably over 200 types of cereals. I've never checked in those things. And cereals, drinks. Is you shocking? I was always shocked at my daughter's drinking bottles. It's just how much I paying for those design on the outside and the bottles, then paying inside. She brought home this bottle, like $2 bottle of green tea. It's God, how come we did not come with that? We own the green tea. The Chinese have that, but now, and I have fresh green tea at home, leaves. No, she's buying that thing. I said, why do you spend money? You're buying a psychological product. It's nothing. Right? But the invention, people are so creative. I just made some from Frito-Lay. I said, how do you do this stuff? Chips. We create them. Then, of course, we create so many kinds of food, you don't know what to eat. That produces another type of profession. It's called nutritionist. To help you determine what's good for you, what's bad for you. Then you move on to the restaurants. Chefs have become artists. Do you notice that chefs have become, and the more money you pay, the less food you get. What's with that? Again, you're not buying food. You're not buying protein or calories. You're buying your psychological and spiritual experience. Then, of course, after you eat so much, what do you need? Another billion-dollar industry to help you lose what you just eat. It's just something. It's like in the U.S., the only reason we grow some grass is to cut it. Do you notice that? That's called age of abundance. We just like it. We enjoy it. Nothing, we don't need it. We like it. Liking is the new theme of 21st century. Personalized consumption, psychological and spiritual products. Hence, the traditionally undervalued talents. Hence, we want people who are in art, who are in music, who can write stories, who can make good movies. Now, a computer game, video game, Grand Theft Auto is over $1 billion. Computer games, those things, and then how much money we're making we're contributing to the athletics, the athletes, the football, soccer, and all those things. I can't believe I'm from University of Oregon. The Ducks team is doing great. I never watch it. I stay away from. I can't believe people would spend money watching a bunch of guys fighting over a ball. Just doesn't make sense. Those should be discouraged. All of this thing says that do not underestimate the value of special talents. Remember, all those talents schools were supposed to homogenize. We're supposed to get rid of them. All those talents. Take dyslexia as an example. Dyslexia was a problem. It still is considered by many as a problem. Dyslexia is caused by different wiring, neuron wirings in your brain. Is that it give you different ability of perception. It interferes with reading, with a 2D reading, but it's great for 3D perception or for art. So, on the one hand, you can say, I'm going to fix you if you can't read. On the other hand, I said, no, I'm not going to fix you as a reader. I'm going to help you become better artists or better astrophysicists. Dyslexic folks are very good at looking at stars. But 100 years ago, you look at this, identify the kind of the celestial bodies or star patterns. It doesn't do you any good 100 years ago. 100 years ago, there was no, I think, discipline called astrophysics. They might, and that's called witchcrafting. You look at sky, this is where you can bury somebody. That's not, no. So with this change, the new middle class, how are we going to cultivate the new middle class? That's our interesting challenge. So what's the new middle class like? We talk about the creative type, the diversity of talents. Today, in essence, every talent is useful, every fully developed. If Lady Gaga is useful, anyone can be useful. It's if Honey Boo Boo is useful, speak of that. No. Let's think about this broad thinking. There's another element we need as well, which is called the entrepreneur skills. Because you can be creative, you have talents, but if you're not entrepreneurial, you still are looking for someone to hire you. But when that someone doesn't exist. Now musicians are, you think musicians are creative. Some musicians are. Actually not all of them. If you play in the symphony orchestra, that's actually a horrible job. The most miserable musicians, you have to play exactly what people tell you, right? And research says, well, actually the chamber orchestra folks are the happiest because they get to improvise. And now, actually think about that. I was talking to them. A music entrepreneurship professor. Music entrepreneurs now talk about this. Well, the reason is that you mean like this, the Philadelphia Philharmonica, the music, and they can produce the best. But now you can have that at home, on your iPad, on your iPhone. You can, so it's, that means we need only one great orchestra there now. So what happened to the local people? They have to be creative entrepreneur. That means they have to create opportunities for themselves. So that's the entrepreneur spirit. Everybody has to have a startup mindset. And today, the term I use as entrepreneurs does not only mean business entrepreneurs. It's much more than just making money. It's just much more than profit making. Because today we need social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs are people who have an advocate for a social cause, for mission. I think many of you may be involved in that. You want to solve a social problem of environment, social inequity, social injustice, all those things you want to solve. We call them social entrepreneurs. But today, you cannot do as before. Before, most of people, social entrepreneurs are called the charitable, kind of workers. Not anymore. You have to operate in a very entrepreneurial way. And we also need intrapreneurs. Those are the people those businesses are looking for, but they can't find them. That is people who can actively create solutions. They're not just follow orders. They create solutions. Like Apple computers would say something like this. If you want to be managed, you are not employable. If you want to be managed, you are not employable. Now remember those college kids? We graduate them to be managed. They had a major. They have the knowledge. When those knowledge can be easily found on Google. Why do you need those stuff? So we need the spirit. We need the policy entrepreneurs. This is actually quite fun. The government shut down. I didn't feel it. Did you guys feel the government shut down? I don't go to parks, no time. And it was actually an interesting illustration. I look at the media. Most people say, oh, Americans is too polarized. We can't agree. We got the Tea Party. We got the Coffee Party. They never get along. The issue is that America is built on diversity of opinions, perspectives. We have always been polarized. What we have been missing is policy entrepreneurs to bridge the gap. If these people, the public sector, those people should be able to bring people together. If they were entrepreneurs, would they say, I'm not talking to you? They were just like kindergartners. Basically, I'm not talking to you guys anymore. If it's not my way, it's the highway. Entrepreneurs talk. Entrepreneurs try to strike deals. We need politicians who can strike deals, who can be creative, those things. So it's not about the difference in opinion. It's can you work together? That's the entrepreneur. So what is the entrepreneur spirit? The entrepreneur spirit that everybody wants is a startup spirit, that when there is a problem, you create a solution. You don't complain. You create a solution. We have a solution, you try to put it to practice. You don't just say, why don't you try it? When your practice fails, try again. Called resilience. That's a very simple process of things. All of this we need is the spirit. We have been, I think, honestly, the last generation of education, we've taught people to look for jobs. We taught people to say, wait for someone to tell you what to do. Like our schools, our students do this. They come to school and say, so what do I have to do to get an A? That's an employee mindset. They don't think about, I'm here to learn. They think about, I'm here to do something for you so you can reward me with a grade. And what do I have to do to get into Harvard? It's the same kind of concept. I can tell you how hard it is to change that mindset. I'm teaching a class at the University of Oregon. A lot of teachers, principals in this. The first thing I'm trying to tell them, I said, you have an A. You paid for the A already, so don't worry about the A, okay? You bought the A. I'm not going to worry about. Now let's try to see what you want to do with this class. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to help you learn something. That open-ended approach can cause a lot of anxiety among the students. They're still trying to figure out, so what's going to affect my grade? I said, you got a grade. No one's going to be affected. So don't worry about those. That's a mindset. So this is the entrepreneur spirit. Now, let's think the other way. Okay. What does this mean to be a great entrepreneur? Well, these are the entrepreneurial qualities we must have. The entrepreneurial qualities that you should have, everybody should have. So we think about confidence. Confidence is very important. And we think about friends, social capital, ability to take risks, creativity. Many of you would agree these are important. These are called non-cognitive skills that matter. Non-cognitive skills that matter. And matter a lot. But the issue is this. Can we have this and other things? Can you be a sausage and bacon? That's the challenge, right? Because right now, all our schools, wherever I go, people say, well, we still need the basics. We still need literacy, numeracy. We still have to go after test scores. You still have to produce the 2400 in the SAT. You still have to 5.5 AP, 5.5s on the AP, or whatever you're trying to do. We still have to homogenize kids some way. Can we have this and that? I don't know. Let me actually call your attention to something called side effects. Because side effects is something education seldom talks about. But in medical research, we talk about all the time. When you go buy Tylenol or anything, always warns you this can cure your runny nose, but it can cause headache and can cause drowsiness. Remember those drowsiness pills? In education, have you ever seen any education product give you those warning labels? You come to my school, you can be this, but not that. We never tell those kids that, right? I don't know if there's any, you have so many vendors, you can go find out. Everybody's trying to say how great their products can help you do something, but never say at what cost, except money, I know some like early reading programs, you probably know this very well, that they should have an honest label, like warning label says, this reading program can help your children improve test scores, but may cause them to hate reading forever. Right? Don't you think we should have those labels? We don't do those things. And that's why we, at national educational systems, in this age of globalization, we always admire other countries' test scores, think that's have the best education system, but we never look at what cost. We look at it like America actually is an interesting country. For example, we don't think what do we gain, what do we lose. For example, we never question speak of confidence, about confidence. That's a good example to question. So what causes the side effects? Let's think about the three things. Number one, time. Time is a constant. When you spend time on one thing, you cannot spend the same time on something else. Right? That's just for sure. So when you spend time studying for a test, there's no time for you to have a sleepover. They just don't work together, right? Remember those things? But sleepover might be necessary for developing social skills. how to deal with conflicts, how to hang out with people who are not nice to you. That's part of business, right? That's some of the issues you have to deal with. And then we think about resources. In your school, this is called scientific. If you spend most of the time trying to ensure that a person acquires all the so-called basics, you're going to invest a lot more there. If you don't have enough money, then you may cut music and art. That's something just, And then we have some others. A person may be great in one area, has great potential in one area. If you force that person to spend time trying to fix that person's not good deficit, you have wasted that person. Think of Michael Phelps, the great swimmer. I think he's ADHD. Michael Phelps, who won a lot of medals. If you were working fixing him, make sure he could read before he could swim, he might still be hooked on phonics in some basement. Not in the swimming pool, right? You think about that. And then there's another one is that there's some skills and knowledge and talents, they're antithetical. They don't work together. They actually contradict each other. For example, risk-taking is not the same as compliant to authority, right? So that when you take a test, any test rewards your ability to comply, to find the answers the authorities want. So if you look busy and learning to find answers, you'll forget to ask questions. Curiosity is the desire to seek more. If you satisfy curiosity too early, they're not going to learn. Psychologists will tell you the faster you give answers to kids, the faster you kill their curiosity. They don't go together. But the faster you give answers, the more efficient you are at turning this to sausages. Remember the first graders? You're so busy. Oh, this kid knows so much math. And Heather, you were in China. The Chinese parents are always proud. By age 4, this kid can recite 300 Chinese poems. So but you satisfy them too early. That's no good. So those things don't go together. And confidence is the same thing, right? Confidence by the way, confidence is one of the best predictors now of future success. Confidence can be arrogant. You may not like overly confident people, right? But that's very crucial. All entrepreneurs are confident. Otherwise, how can you become creative? How can you be happy with your solutions? Now, so let's think about confidence, an interesting example in international tests. As usual, in 2003, this data called TIMSS, Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study. American kids, 8th graders, scored below Asian students, students from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Korea, Japan. But on this same test, they ask another question called confidence. Are you confident in your math? Do you believe you can do your math very well? So, as you can probably imagine, American students, despite their ignorance, they're very confident. They're out-confident everybody, and then this is what we think. So this is how this data actually is. It happens all the time. We have, for example, a very strong negative correlation between test scores and confidence across almost all international studies, 4th grade and 8th grade. So some countries successful getting kids with high scores, but they make them less confident. Is that a problem? And how do we do that? By the way, this data is interpreted, the negative correlation, different ways. In America, a lot of the policymakers who are very eager to do more testing and more standards, they say this data shows American kids are too happy for their own good. To improve Americans' math capacity, we got to make them a little bit more miserable. And that's because the interpretation is this: why are American kids so happy with such low test scores? Because they just don't know how bad they are. Why don't they know how bad they are? Because we don't have high standards. We don't test them often. That's why since the 1990s, the big movement in America is to up the standards, to higher standards, more rigorous, and test kids often, and let them know they're really bad, and let their parents know too. I know that's published in the newspaper, make them feel really bad. That's how we do it. It's hold them accountable. That's what the whole new argument is about. But the Asian countries, by the way, I'm going to show you this. This is so historical. All the time, countries with high scores have lower confidence and lower enjoyment and lower interest. This is the most recent one from the 2011 data, TIMSS, the same data, same testing, 40-some countries. Look at the top countries: Korea, Singapore, Chinese, Taipei, and Hong Kong, Japan. These are all the East Asian countries. Always great in test scores, always great in test scores. And then you look at the Anglo-Saxon tradition countries, US, UK, and Australia. Like when I look at this, the math scores is really, the difference is really caused by the tools you use to eat with. It's a matter of chopsticks versus spoons. If you use chopsticks, your scores do very well. In math, you look at it's 100% of variation can be explained by the tool you use to eat with. Right? But then look at Korea. Korea is number 1. 2% of Koreans, 3% of Koreans are confident. And then you go down there, it's so very interesting. And then that's why all the Asian countries, they look at that negative correlation in a very different way. They don't talk about scores. They talk about the sacrifice. The Singaporeans, Koreans, Hong Kong, Chinese, they always talk about how come our students do not have the confidence, do not have the interest, do not have the motivation to pursue that. Because they recognize very well, if you are interested in something, you will become more creative. If you are confident, you become more creative. But we can force you to get good scores. We cannot force you to become creative. That's the sacrifice. So that's the big difference. That's why now Singapore has been trying to reduce its math content by 1/3. Their argument is called teach less, learn more. China just again tried, not last 2 months ago, issued 10 new measures to reduce emphasis on academics. Number 1 of them is about forbidden testing before 4th grade. They are actually trying to ban homework, written home. In China, banning homework, but none of this measure will be implemented because the culture has been driven by this for so long. Korea is trying to do a free semester for their students because they want to change. They want kids to be more confident, more happier, and have more interest. By the way, this is not only East Asian countries. Finland has been another country that had high scores on the PISA. But Finland students have no interest in science. If you have no interest, you cannot become a good scientist. That's why Finnish people are very concerned about this. And Finland, by the way, has been a great country for a long time. It has actually is getting in trouble now. It's all of they are trying to reform. I was just with a group of the Finnish Ministry of Education folks in Australia. Were discussing all these big changes, and PISA has the same results. And then I took some of the data. Countries with higher PISA scores, indicated by the red bar, have lower entrepreneurial confidence. Actually, lower entrepreneurial activities in general. Those countries. So this actually is quite interesting. The side effects. When you pursue something, you sacrifice something. When you become the most effective sausage maker, you cannot make bacon. That's something that's very interesting, simple thing to think about. Now for us, to go on, so what can we do? What have to think about the next step? To produce people as people who can stay out of a basement. Let's examine this one. American education. Actually, I want to ask another question before we end this. If we to think about is that side effects might answer this big question. Why is America still here? This is not a Canadian question, right? It's the Canadians have kept wondering why you're still there. Why can't you become the United States of Canada? And well, this actually is a historical question to address. You have heard, you have read very frequently that American education is getting worse, is in decline. You probably read that all the time, right? But I can tell you, The fact is that American education is not getting worse, is not in decline. It has always been horrible. There were no good days for American education. And I can tell you this is because this historical data. 1964, the first international mathematics study showed Americans 12th graders ranked 12th out of 12 countries. That's pretty bad. You can't get it worse than that. And from then on, it's all going great. So we have been bad for a long, long time. Some of you may remember we were worse than Russia and Soviet Union. We were worse than Japan. Now we're worse than China, India, all those. We've been bad for a long time. But somehow America is still here. And Soviet Union disappeared. Japan has been surpassed by China. All those, America is still here. Not only here, according to President Obama, America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. You can read the rest. He is not bragging. I've checked against the statistics. What he says actually is true. It's factual. At least more factual than some of his other facts. You know, you look at this, the whole thing. So how does this explain? It's precisely explained by our low test scores. America, in essence, has had an education system that's a broken sausage-making machine that happens to have some bacon made. We're broken. So we have a horrible homogenizing system. We do not make everybody the same. Therefore, we look very bad on test scores. Because test scores make everybody the same. But in this process, by accident, we produce some people who have supported the economy, who are driving the economy forward. You know, and that broken machine is done through locally controlled school systems, locally controlled standards, locally controlled curriculum, locally controlled professional autonomy. Now, American public schools are fixing all of that. And I am concerned that independent schools like yours will lose your independence because you'll be driven, you'll be seduced by the vision of a common set of curriculum. You'll try to comply with what other people want you to do. We are trying to produce those test scores. That's very, very strong seduction. You know, you want to. So I can tell you that's not going to keep the kids out of their parents' basement. What we need to do is instead of trying to fix our sausage maker, we have to change the paradigm. This is the paradigm I'm going to explain in the next session. It's what I call the new paradigm. Is trying to make everybody great in their own way. That education is not to fix someone's deficit, but enhance their strength. Is to make everybody great. This is a new paradigm. To solve, next session I'm going to explain how you do it. But for those who may not come to the next session, you may have something else to do. I can't imagine, but just to say, how do you keep your kids out of the basement? First of all, read this book. It has all the prescriptions. So the whole thing is in the commercial for my book. But anyway, it's over there. But if you want the slides, you can download from my website. I don't know, someone typed the HJJ. I didn't type that in there. But so it's you can download most of the slides on the website and follow me on Twitter and email me. And so anyway, it's very simple. I truly believe in the long run from any historical data is that to win the race between education and technology, we have entered a new time. Therefore, we need every student to become globally competent, entrepreneurial, and creative, which demands a new paradigm that respects individual passion, interest, and predisposition, not trying to homogenize them. Education should be measured by how well you support diverse needs, not how well you can make them into one person. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.